Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our Wednesday edition, here to give you 2 hours of your sports fill. You can see us live on Facebook, Mac's Sports page, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Like, follow, and subscribe where you can. I'm Mac with my co-host Jack Hirsch, legendary sports writer, former president of the Boxing Writers Association. How you doing today, my New York friend?
Hey, great. A lot's going on in sports. A lot for us to talk about.
Yes, there is, Jack. A whole lot of stuff. I got to get us caught up since we had Monday and Tuesday off with the updates. So let's start with the Sunday's game. The Saints in overtime beat the Chargers 30-27. Miami, in a surprise, beat San Francisco 43-17. Dallas got by the Giants in a close, tough game. Cleveland goes to 4-1, beating the Colts 32-23. Seattle squeaks by Minnesota 27-26. Houston downs the Jags 30-14. The Ravens shut down Cincinnati and Joe Burrows 27-3. Carolina 23, Atlanta 16. Raiders surprise Kansas City with a 40-32 win. Arizona beats the Jets pretty good, 30-10. And in the NBA, the Lakers win the championship 4-2, 106-93. LeBron triple-double, MVP of the series. He had 28 points, 19 rebounds, 11 assists. Anthony Davis grabs 15 rebounds. Caldwell Pope, he added 17, and Rondo added 19 from the bench. For the Heat, Jimmy Butler was held in check with 12 points. DeBayo led the Heat with 25 points and 10 rebounds. This was the lowest-rated championship series in history, so that's something crazy. In the Major League Baseball on Monday, the Braves hand the Dodgers a 5-1 loss, jumping to a 1-0 lead for the National League pennant in a 4-run ninth inning. Pitcher Max Fried dominates. The Rays are off to a 2-0 series as Monday night led lead for the AL pennant, grabbing a 3-run.
And Mac and the Braves last night held on to beat the Dodgers.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, Jack. I just want to get those games out of the way real quick, just to catch us up. And in college football, which we almost forget that they're playing, well, I'll give you the standings. Oh, sorry about that, folks. Let's do a little college music for you. Yes, sir. So that's my little college intro for some of the college games. We had a little Notre Dame fighting song. So we've almost forgot they're playing. In the AAC, Navy is in first, believe it or not, at 2-0. In the ACC, Clemson and North Carolina and Notre Dame are all undefeated. In the Big 12, Iowa State and Kansas State, Oklahoma State are undefeated. In the Independent League, BYU and Liberta are undefeated. And in SEC, East Georgia is in first at 3-0, and the West Alabama is 3-0. So we really don't know that they're playing. I mean, the coverage, it doesn't even feel like they're playing, Jack. But there are games playing in the college football, so I figured that I'd kind of update us on that. So in tennis, Rafael Nadal, he got straight sets wins over Djokovic, 6-0, 6-2, and a tight one, 7-5 in the last. In basketball, Doc Rivers was hired for the 76ers empty coaching job. Joe Morgan, the great Cincinnati Reds second baseman, passed away. And so sad news on that, Jack. I loved watching Joe Morgan play.
Yeah, Joe Morgan had a 22-year career. Now, he's predominantly remembered as being a Cincinnati Red, but he only played 8 of his 22 years with the Cincinnati Reds, but he did win back-to-back MVP awards. And when you talk about those great big red machines, of the 1970s, who won the 2 world championships in the 1975 and 1976 seasons, with Johnny Bench on the team, with Pete Rose on the team, with Tony Perez on the team, with Ken Griffey Jr. and George Foster, etc., etc. It was Joe Morgan who won back-to-back MVP awards. He was the MVP, not only that team, but of the league in the 1975 and 1976 seasons. One of the great second basemen of all time.
And Nadal, he's catching up to Federer. We had a big debate of who was better, Nadal beating Federer more, but of course Federer is more accomplished and wins, but Nadal has almost drawn even.
Well, he has drawn even on majors. They each have 20 majors apiece.
Right.
If they only played the French Open, Nadal would virtually, win every time out. That's his 13th, victory at the French Open. And out of his 20 majors, 13 of them have come there. And Djokovic wasn't really in top form, so it wasn't that big a surprise to me. But when you think of the big three, Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, 80% of the finals, it seems, over the last 20 years or so, it's those guys have been, right there. I mean, it's so rare for anyone else it seems, to win a major outside of those three. Even though other players occasionally do it, those three are always there at the end. And for the rare times they don't win it, they go to the finals, at least the semifinals.
Yes, very true. The top 3 players in the world, no doubt, on the men's side anyway. What do you think about Le'Veon Bell being released from the Jets? That happened last night. They couldn't get a trade for him, which I wasn't surprised. I saw this coming a mile away. What do you think, Jeff?
Now, let me tell you what I think. When Jamal Adams was having difficulties with the Jets, and he got traded to Seattle eventually because he was becoming a malcontent, Le'Veon Bell criticized him for forcing his way out, for forcing a trade. Le'Veon Bell basically did the same thing.
Right.
And Le'Veon Bell, his stock isn't that high right now. I could sympathize with him. He had a coach in Adam Gase who really didn't want him. Right. Really didn't use him that much. Really didn't use him like the star he thought he was. But when Le'Veon Bell, his last big year was in 2017, 3 years ago. He was one of the best backs in the league with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But then he sat out 2018. A running back to sit out a year, that could be devastating, okay? Because these guys lose a fraction of a millimeter off their speed. They're not quite the same player. And then he comes back 2019, part of the year, and then he's injured this year, so on. And he didn't like the way he was used in the last game. And of course, when you're on a team like the Jets, who's 0-5, it's hard to keep your spirits up. I mean, in training camp, Le'Veon Bell said all the right things. He was talking well of the team, talking about being a leader and so on. But, he was in the situation, obviously. He was very unhappy. He forces his way out, and someone's going to pick him up. Someone's going to pick him up, but he's also going to find that his situation, at least initially, isn't going to be any better than it was on the Jets, whoever picks him up. They're going to pick him up to fill in the gap or to be a backup or so on. And your guess is as good as mine, where he winds up. Maybe he'll wind up in an ideal situation with a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, with a winning team, and he'll be happy in whatever role he's in. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, what was crazy about that, and we'll get to last night's updates here in a second. But on Le'Veon Bell, what was crazy to me was that year off, he really didn't stay in shape. He tried to become a rapper. He came into camp overweight, out of condition, and it really didn't look like he was serious, to me anyway. If you wanted to push on and get this big contract that the Jets gave him, he was in no condition to really to start and play. And with the Jets offensive line not gelling and not coming together, and that's last year and this year, bad situation for him all the way around. And as you said, Adam Gase wasn't the one that was there when he was signed. And I just think that was a bad situation for the Jets and for Le'Veon Bell to come in the shape he was in. It really didn't look like he was ready to play, Jack.
No, it never quite gelled for him in New York. When they Jets signed him, and this regime wasn't the one that did, the old regime did,
Right.
They thought they were getting a star, okay, someone who could really spark the franchise and so on. But it's a situation, he just never got out of the gate, Le'Veon Bell. He could never get started or really establish himself as an elite Jet. And the hope was it was going to happen this year. And this year, he said all the right things. His attitude appeared to be okay. Then he had the one game in which he was kept in a little too long by Adam Gase. So, yeah, he got injured in that game. He was already hurting, but instead of being kept out, basically Adam Gase threw him in. It was like a sink or swim type thing. So then he missed a little time, then he came back. His offensive line, at least for the run, wasn't as bad as some people are going to make it out to be.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that bad. A lot of it goes on Le'Veon Bell himself. He just wasn't cutting. He just hasn't quite been the same player he was at Pittsburgh. And I think that year off, may have attributed to that.
I agree. I think that if he does go anywhere and signs with a team, I think he'll be a little choosy. I don't think he's just going to sign, with a team that's as almost bad as the Jets. If he goes anywhere, it will probably be, as you said, to a Kansas City or a team like that that's competitive and already has a good team. And I don't know if there's any team out there like that will offer him.
Don't fool yourself. I mean, he's not looked at around the league as the star player he was before. Sometimes it's just getting a job is the best you could do. Look, Cam Newton was a former MVP. MVP, and he couldn't find a job till New England threw him a lifeline. And then, of course, he's been fantastic for New England, thus far, the few games he's played. But Le'Veon Bell is just going to have to take whatever he's offered. It doesn't become that easy after a while. Certain guys have name value, okay? But around the league, they look at the guy's attitude as well. They can put up with a malcontent if he could truly deliver, if he's at the peak of his career. Teams get put up with a certain amount. But if they feel Le'Veon Bell's role could be as a part-time player and a very effective one part-time, his attitude's going to have to adjust to that. And he did himself no favors by tweeting things out. Someone put a message on social media before the trade how good it would be if he got traded elsewhere. And Le'Veon Bell hit the like button on that. You just don't do things like that. If you're unhappy, you go behind closed doors, which he initially did, to his credit. And he spoke to, both the GM, Joe Douglas, and the head coach, Adam Gase. He let him know how unhappy he was, how he was being used. And maybe he didn't like what they said back. But the worst that's going to happen, hey, you don't like the way you're being used, you have your contract. You're still going to get your money. You put up with it, as long as you can, because they're not going to want to keep you around anyway. Listen, Mac, we all know how it is. I should say at least a lot of us know how it is to be on a job where you don't feel you're appreciated, where you don't feel your talents are being used, where you hate coming into work. It's hard. When you hate coming into work, even coming in one extra day could be like torture. One extra hour there, you can't take it. And especially you're a running back in which a lot of your game feeds off emotion. If you're not enthusiastic, especially as a football player, it's going to be extremely difficult to perform effectively.
Well, Jack, two things I'll comment on that you said. First of all, the Cam situation to me was totally different. Cam could have took some jobs as a backup. The teams that have young quarterbacks really don't want somebody like Cam Newton around because of his experience and that he might fight them for the starting job. You look at Daniel Jones right now, the struggles he's having. You know how many Giant fans would be crying for Cam Newton to be going in there right now?
Absolutely, good point, Matt.
And and with Le'Veon Bell, period. They did try to trade for him, and you're correct in saying that, the attitude means a lot. They already knew, the Jets already knew the attitude. When you sit out a contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers because you want more money, and Pittsburgh has every year they have a solid team, and he tries to use the most effective way to get out of that contract situation by sitting out and not getting paid. You already know you have an attitude problem with Le'Veon Bell. So to actually sign him after that, whoever did sign him and why he was signed, I have no idea. It sure didn't help the Jets out. I knew it wouldn't help the Jets out. And as I said, when he showed up like that to the Jets camp out of shape, trying to become a rapper, it was just a bad situation from the start. And that should have told the Jets something. When he set out that last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers contract, that should have told him something right off the get-go. And comparing our jobs to a job like that is different in a way, Jack. And this is what I mean. They're getting paid millions of dollars, where a lot of people are getting paid, $70,000 average, $50,000, $70,000 average. And it's like apples and oranges. You're more of an entertainer. You're an athlete. You have a little bit more power than, say, the average person who either goes to work or quits and can't find another job. So I understand where you're going with it, but it's a little different. I mean, whether you hate going to work there or not, whether I hate going to my job or you may hate going to your job, we still have to do it till we find something better. We can't just sit out or stop working, because then we get fired.
But there comes a point, Mac, where there's the final straw. I mean, when I eventually quit as a kid, like at age 17, playing competitive baseball, at a high level for that age, I guess, at the parade grounds in Brooklyn, I knew the end was over. I mean, I was riding the bench a while, but we won a game 19-5, and I didn't get into the game. I was sitting on the bench as is. And that's when I had it. And I basically told the manager off and basically quit at that point. 19-5. The game we're winning by 14 runs. And Le'Veon Bell's attitude was, finally, hit the last game. They have Joe Flacco a backup in there. Joe Flacco's not going to stretch the field. He's not going to throw a lot of meaningful passes. I mean, down the field. I mean, he's going to dump a lot of passes off.
Right.
And they need a running game badly in that situation with Joe Flacco as a backup. And Le'Veon Bell only got to carry the ball 13 times. So if he's only going to carry it 13 times in that situation, things weren't going to be getting better for him. So he just about had it after that game. I mean, that was basically the breaking point for Le'Veon Bell. And it got to the point, obviously it was building up. Adam Gase doesn't really value running backs that much. I mean, some coaches are like that. They feel you could, as long as you have a decent offensive line, which the Jets really don't, you feel you could put anyone at the running back position. The blockers will clear a hole for them, and they can be effective. So Le'Veon Bell, even though he had discussions with Adam Gase, and Le'Veon Bell would say the right thing to the media, no, it's overblown. Me and the coach get along fine. He knows he's not wanted. Maybe they're cordial towards one another. They could talk. They were friendly outwardly. There were no hostilities. You still know whether someone really wants you there or not. And he had that feeling all along that Adam Gase just didn't really want him there. And the way Adam Gase used him, that confirmed it.
Well, you brought up something I want to touch base on real quick before we get to the updates again. The running back position, as you saw, that McCaffrey got signed to a huge contract. He's hurt, but the Carolina running game is still working. I mean, the running back they have in there right now is competing at a high level. There was talk about Barkley signing him to a huge contract. Second time in 2 years he's been hurt. I'm not saying the running back position doesn't matter. Derrick Henry kind of showed us that last night. But a lot has to do with the offensive line and the blocking. And when you're running the ball as much as these running backs do are being used, as much as these running backs are being used, I believe that the offense has a lot to do with the scheme, Jack. If the Jets had a scheme where they were going to run the ball first, which it doesn't look like they've had in a couple years under Gase or a few years under Gase, they want to open it up more, but they don't have the players to do that right now. They don't have the line. They don't have the receiving core to do that right now. So they would have to be
Robbie Anderson.
Right.
Yeah, Mac. I mean, Robbie Anderson getting sent to the Carolina Panthers. I mean,
right. I mean, right. I agree with what you said.
But the Jets, whenever they get a player that could be a true impact player, they don't seem to hold on to him.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, Leonard Williams is called overrated and so on, but he was drafted very high overall. He's gone. Robbie Anderson is gone. You're not quite building a nucleus there with the Jets.
No.
You don't exactly know the direction that they're going in. You see, it's different with the Giants. I mean, the Giants are 0-5, but the Giants, you kind of feel under Joe Judge, they're headed in the right place.
Well,
they're losing competitive games, and they lost the tight one to the Cowboys, a game really I think they should have won. They played the Rams, very, very close. Against the Chicago Bears, they had a chance to win it at the end with the incompletion thrown in the end zone. So there are 3 games against 3 very good teams. Well, maybe I shouldn't call the Cowboys a very good team.
I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean. Those were winnable games. And as they keep improving, they'll turn the corner in a year or two and actually win, at least some of those type of games.
Yeah.
But the Jets, you don't get the feeling they're going from dot to dot. Okay, no. They're like detouring. It's like going to a destination rather than going there directly. The Jets are fumbling around. They're going sideways, left, right, backing up, forward, and they're trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, there's no direction there at all. That's for sure, and I agree with that 100%. So we'll get to last night's game. You have the Titans against the Bills, and I thought this was going to be one of the better games of the week because they were both undefeated. The Bills look good, and we forget to talk about the Titans when it comes to the best teams in the league. They went to the championship last year, just like the Packers last year went to the championship, and we were all surprised that they jumped out and they're undefeated. The Bills D couldn't stop the Titans offense. Josh Allen kind of looked like he did the past 2 years. He's a dynamic player, but inaccurate at critical times during a game. And people were putting him, Jack, in the conversation, and way too early in the season for me, about talk for the league, for the MVP for the year. And like I said, we forget how good the Titans are. I mean, they have a great offensive line. They have a very good defense. Tannehill, off play action. He can throw deep. He's pretty accurate. He seems to have found a home there. And the coach is a very good coach. He played,
Mike Vrabel,
he played linebacker for Belichick for quite amount of years. He was there for the Super Bowl. It seems like he knows
he beat Belichick in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it seems like he knows what he's doing. I mean, he doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, either. So, what do you think? Do you think the Bills, as we talked about before, are up there? It doesn't look like. I know it's only one game. Every team has a bad game. I mean, I still think the Bills are favored to win the AFC East. I still think they're going to be there and be a force in the playoffs. But are they up amongst, the Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and even the Titans, who we forget to mention? Are they at that level yet?
Definitely, Mac. It's a 16-game schedule. The results surprised me because the Titans had a rough time. Their practices were disorganized because of the COVID situation within their organization. So the result did surprise me, the way the game played out. I thought, just based on how both teams could prepare, that the Bills definitely had an edge in the game. But it didn't turn out that way at all. But over the course of a 16-game schedule, teams like the Bills, they're going to hit a bump once in a while, and they're going to have a really bad game. And yesterday was it. Josh Allen, he would move the ball up and down the field, look really good at times, then really look erratic other times. You take a couple of the picks he threw. The first one, the couple of picks both to Malcolm Butler. One of them went right off the receiver's hands into Malcolm Butler's hands. And on the box score, you see an interception. That's not the quarterback's fault, but obviously the second one he overthrew. And yeah, he occasionally reverts to his erratic self, where he threw balls into crowds, where it was lucky it wasn't intercepted. And he'll show these moments of greatness and then be erratic as well. But if you compare him to what he was last year, you can't argue there's been improvement. That's what you want to see with a young quarterback. He's in his third year in the league. Is he improving and taking the next step? Not whether he's elite or how he compares to the other quarterbacks in the league. You compare him to himself based on the guy you drafted, and is he improving? And the answer is yes. And then you could ask, and is the potential there to keep improving? And you'd have to say the answer is yes. He has the arm strength. He's a big play type quarterback. But of course, he could drive you crazy by throwing it all away on one particular play. There were things about yesterday's game that were out of whack. Not that it made a difference, but with about 12 minutes to go, Buffalo is down 28-10. They score a touchdown to make it 28-16. Immediately, Josh Allen holds up two fingers that they're going for the 2-point conversion. Now, I was thinking, he held up the two fingers so quick, I'm thinking, who made him coach to make that decision? And it didn't make sense the way some of these coaches chase the points. Because if you miss the 2-point conversion, which they did, think of what that does psychologically to the team with 12 minutes to go. You're down 12 points now, and you need 2 touchdowns to come back to win. 2 touchdowns. You kick the extra point. Psychologically, now you could tell yourself, well, we need a touchdown and a field goal. Obviously, you have to go for the 2-point conversion late on. Just what it means motivating the players, what's in the back of their mind. That extra point might give them a little extra push, them thinking they're actually more in the game than they are. But all last night, penalties were hurting the Bills. One of their cornerbacks used to be, a great star player in this league. One of the Buffalo corners, Josh Norman. When he was with the Washington Redskins, I mean, he was one of the top 5 cover men in the league, and he significantly lost a step. He was penalized, a couple of times. And we talk about Le'Veon Bell before, same with players like Josh Norman. They have this great name value because teams remember when they were like a star in the league. So they're thinking, well, they're not the same player they were before, but what they have left could be sufficient to fill a gap, fill a position, and so on. It's funny about a Tuesday night game. We talked about it in the show the other day. It was only the second Tuesday night game in the last 70 years of the NFL. Yeah. I mean, and you kind of wonder this year that spreading the games out, is that going to be a thing in the future? Is the NFL going to find a way to give us a game Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night? You just kind of wonder. But if they do that, they have to be warned to learn the lesson from the sport of boxing. Boxing used to have shows each night, it seemed, during the week, before television hit it big time. And then television came into being, and they would run extra shows in the 1960s. And the sport hit a bad slump because of overexposure. And as great as the NFL is to people, there's just so much of getting a good thing. Because if we had an NFL game each night, we kind of lose our desire to keep watching it night after night after night. It's enough they give us a Thursday night. We have all day Sunday. We have Monday. And and by the time Monday night comes around, a lot of times we're not as psyched for the game unless it's really a marquee matchup.
Yeah, there's something to be said about anticipation, Jack, for sure. I mean, I think, it's changed in a lot of sports where baseball plays every game, and it's more for the local crowds to go watch their team. They really don't start watching them until there's a big game once a week, or the playoffs or the World Series hits. There's something to be said about anticipation. I think where it's different today, Jack, is that you have a lot of things that are different than back then, where you have fantasy football, where you can play and actually bet on. Betting is legal in a lot of states. And a lot of fans aren't just there because they're sports diehard fans. It's a lot to do with the stuff around it. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think there is something definitely to be said about anticipation, waiting that week, sort of like waiting for a holiday for Christmas. You want to open the gifts. If you open gifts every day, Christmas would not be the same, definitely. I mean, you are anticipating that day. So there definitely is something to be said about that.
It's funny thing, that comparison, when Marvin Miller was the head of the Major League Players Association, he's as responsible as anyone for players becoming free agents and so on. He was a true pioneer. One time, the Oakland Athletics owner, Charles Finley, who was quite a character himself, said, let them all become free agents at the end of each year. Now, on the surface, that would be mouth-watering for the players. We can all become free agents. But Marvin Miller said he dreaded that idea because then the value would go down of the players if they all became free agents.
Sure. Too much of a good thing is no good, Jack, as they say. Yeah. So that kind of talks about last night's game. Again, the Titans, I think, are very underrated. After going to championships, I think Green Bay is this year too. I mean, we talk about the great teams and we leave those two teams out of it. In the Major League Championship Series, Jack, Tampa Bay goes up 3-0 last night, and the Braves go up 2-0. Now Tampa has a 5-run fifth, and Astros pitcher, and I hope I'm saying this, Yarbrough pitches 5 innings, giving up only 1 hit. And they're one of 38 teams in baseball history that, or I should say, of the 38 teams in baseball history, 37 have gone on to win with a 3-0 lead in the 7-game series.
2004
I was just gonna say that, Jack. So we had a Renfroe and Wendell. They drove in 2 runs each for the Rays, and they made some really. I don't know if you watched the game, Jack. I watched some of the highlights. They made some unbelievable defensive plays out there in the field. Tampa did.
Well, let me get my bad prediction out of the way very quickly. I said the Kansas City Chiefs would beat the Oakland
and Raiders
by 3 touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. Fell on my face. We could talk about that on Sunday. I could take my licks then. But I did say the Rays were going to sweep the Astros.
Right.
Okay, and they're up 3-0. And, maybe the Astros could grab a game, the 4th game yet. But the Rays are just better. Very underrated, and so. And then you and I both picked them actually to beat the Yankees in the series, too. So the Rays are absolutely for real. They have an outstanding bullpen, great all-around lineup and so on. The Dodger-Braves series is the one. You gave the Braves a good chance. I thought the Braves would extend them to 6 games. I still think the Dodgers are going to come back because I could tell you, Mac, a lot of teams, I could start naming series that came back from a 2-0 deficit and went on to win the series. But what's a bit alarming with the Dodgers is Clayton Kershaw. He had to miss game 2 because of back issues. And now he won't be starting game 3. So, and if the Dodgers don't win game 3, I don't want to say they're cooked, but the Braves are a very good team.
Yeah.
And I don't see him coming back from a 3-0, deficit at that point. But
Yeah,
we'll see where the
listen,
sun.
the Dodgers, Jack, were the big favorites to win. They supposedly have the best team in baseball when the season starts. And there's always a saying, wait to see what happens on the field. I mean, they got on paper, there's a lot of good teams. Rosters are very good in every sport, any team sport that you see. But you still got to play the game. And Atlanta definitely has a pitching staff that can beat anybody. And if their pitching staff holds up within these next 3 games, I agree with you. I don't think there's any way the Braves sweep the Dodgers. But I think the Braves have a real good shot at beating the Dodgers, being up 2-0, Jack.
But I could tell you, Major League Baseball and the networks, what they want are ratings.
Right.
They want the right matchups. Obviously, a Yankee-Dodger matchup would have been beautiful. Even Houston Astros, for all their controversy, they would have been good for the ratings. But you get a Tampa Bay, Atlanta Brave, Tampa Bay Ray, Atlanta Brave World Series. That's not exactly the type of thing that viewers around the country and a fan base are going to want to give big ratings to.
Yeah.
And it's so. And also with the Dodgers, consider this: they last won the World Series in 1988, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
If they can't win it with the team they have now, they would in the World Series for a couple of years in a row recently. But if they can't win the World Series, being as loaded as they are, being clearly the best team in baseball, and then not getting it done in the playoffs, when exactly are they going to win the World Series? It gets to the point where fans eventually get tired of hearing, well, wait till next year. I mean,
Right.
We're getting that feeling with the Yankees, too. The last time they were at the series was 11 years ago, 2009. And it's one thing you're in the mix every year, and you give your fans a lot of hope. They know you're going to the playoffs. You're making a serious run at the series. You have to actually win it once in a while. Fan base.
I agree 100%. And let's talk. I want to touch base on Altuve for a second. He's having real problems defensively, throwing the ball to first, second, and third base. And I've seen this before, Jack. I've seen it a couple of times, but especially you brought up the Yankees with Chuck Knobloch. It seemed like every time he got the ball hit to him, he threw it either in the ground or over the first baseman's head with a throw that, almost anybody could make that throw. And it being a professional second baseman, it's like something mental. They actually moved Knobloch out to left field for the rest of the year, and maybe even next year if my memory serves me correct. But there's even in professionals, and you wouldn't think this because they've been playing it for the most part all their lives, they hit some kind of block, especially in the infield, where all of a sudden they just can't make the easiest throws that me and you could even make. I don't know if it's mental. It's got to be mental. What's going on, Jack?
Mac. I'm not getting off topic, even though it's going to start. 1971, the Pittsburgh Pirates were down 2-0 to the Baltimore Orioles in the World Series. Pirates came back, won 4 out of 5 to become World Series champions. The Dodgers should take heed of that. But the MVP of that series was Roberto Clemente, the great Roberto Clemente. We're not going to talk about his arm because that was one of the greatest in baseball history. But according to the Baltimore Oriole manager, Earl Weaver, Roberto Clemente shouldn't have been named MVP of that series. He said Pirate pitcher Steve Blass should have been named MVP. Blass won 2 games in that series. After that World Series, Steve Blass all of a sudden couldn't find home plate.
Yeah.
His control was out of whack completely. Now, why did that happen? Who knows? And the reason I'm mentioning Steve Blass, because the easy thing to say about Jose Altuve, and this is what came to mind, to me at least, is psychologically, he might be a bit messed up over the sign stealing scandal. He's really taken it hard. He hasn't talked back about it. and so on. He's been very timid about it. And all the criticism he's taking seems to bother him a great deal. You could tell when he talks to reporters, he's very shy, he's shook up by it, and mentally, it could be affecting him. He might not even want to be there. And if you don't want to be there and you wish the season was over, you could just go home, hide from all this criticism. What's going to affect you during the game? Your concentration.
Right.
And it would appear he's just not concentrating or so on. And to all of a sudden be unable to throw the ball accurately to a base when you're physically fine, there's got to be, something to it psychological, to have someone lose their concentration, lose their form. It's sometimes impossible to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Jack, I saw it and I remembered it very well when I saw the third error he made during the series. The series has been 3 errors. One was the first, one the second, and one the third. Knobloch came right to mind. Knobloch was, he wasn't the greatest second baseman ever to play the game, but he was a very, very good second baseman and played on a lot of great teams. And when it was just amazing how somebody has played baseball that long cannot make that throw to first, or it's mind blowing to me how that happens.
But Mac, I have a theory, and you answer this. We talk about batting slumps, okay?
Right.
Maybe, because it's very rare, but could there be such thing as a throwing slump?
I don't know.
We can't imagine it. We think it's like riding a bicycle. You just throw to a base. I mean, there has to be some type of explanation.
Yeah.
And the answer normally what happens, and you were talking about it, the answer normally with a talent like Jose Altuve, they never give up on a guy like him. They consider moving him to the outfield, moving him to first base, making him a DH, seeing what they can do to work the problem out. But what exactly is the problem? Where's it coming from? But in this shortened season, they don't have much time to address it. No, it's not spring training. It's not winter ball where they could work with him, work the kinks out. He's already in the water. He's got to swim now.
And you gotta expect, Jack, that I guarantee you. I don't see him taking warm-ups or fielding, but I guarantee you during practice he's making every throw too. I guarantee you that when he's messing around out there and they're just hitting the ball around, I bet he's making that throw.
Let me give you a quiz, Mac. It's only one play. You might miss that. Of all the great NBA players, all-time greats, who was the worst foul shooter?
I'd have to say Shaq. I know there's other ones that.
Good answer. But I was thinking of Wilt Still Chamberlain.
But
Shaq's up there. Even though Shaq one time in the playoff game against Portland, they kept fouling him, and he kept sinking it, and he kept smiling. I got to get out of that. But Wilt Chamberlain, despite making in his historic 100-point game, he did make 28 out of 32 foul shots. But Wilt Chamberlain was a terrible foul shooter. He kept experimenting. Eventually, he'd go to the underhand foul shot. He was a little too strong on it. But Elgin Baylor, when he was his teammate with the Lakers, said he couldn't figure it out because in practice, Wilt Chamberlain would make every foul shot. Every foul shot. But during the games, he would be awful. And it's easy to say, well, it's the pressure playing the games. But he performed otherwise. He rebounded, his field goal percentage. Everything was fine otherwise on the court. With foul shooting, for whatever reason, there's a mental block. Maybe with Altuve, he made one bad throw and then he started thinking about it, then made another one. Look, when Mariano Rivera on that bunt play against Arizona in the 2001 World Series, he pulled Jeter off the bag when Arizona bunted. We had a man on first in the ninth inning, and they bunted to move him to second. And that opened up the floodgates to the Yankees losing. If it wasn't for the bad throw, at most Arizona would have scored 1 run to tie instead of the 2 runs to win in the ninth inning. But the following season, too early in the season, he did the same thing. And Mariano had never did that before. And people were starting to talk, well, maybe he's thinking this is like a mental barrier, that teams are going to start bunting on him more because he can't throw accurately to second base. But Mariano solved the problem, and it was a non-issue. But it snowballs. You start thinking about it. And Mariano Rivera was one of the more strong-minded athletes you'd have, which enabled him to overcome it. Just because a guy's a great player, it doesn't mean he's strong-minded.
That's very true.
Doesn't mean he's strong-minded. And we don't know with Altuve, what has he started to think about it too much, and is he going to be repeating this, over and over? Because if he does, obviously, they're going to have to switch his position. You can't be there at second base anymore.
And the Braves, they outlasted the Dodgers, as you mentioned. The Dodgers came back big in the ninth inning. Atlanta held on. First baseman Freeman had 3 RBIs, leading the offense for the Braves. Today, the Dodgers play the Braves at 6:05. Tampa Bay plays at 8:40. So interesting. The Rays could win it all today, get it out of the way, the Rays and the Braves have a shot to go up 3-0.
Rays and Astros are over. Maybe the Astros could win a game today. It's of little interest to me to see where they go through. When I'm more interested in watching Jose Altuve than the result of the game, how he responds to all this. Brave Dodger game, massive game.
Yeah.
Massive game. Dodgers go down 3-0. Wow. I mean,
that would be
because the Braves, you have a really good pitching staff. I don't have to tell you that. Pretty good team to come back and win 4 in a row against the Braves. Dodgers win today, even if they go down 3-1. They got, they got a shot, but down 3-0.
And we're scheduled to have the Philly voice Joe Santoliquito on.
You got it, Mac.
I keep working on it. He's scheduled to be on at 9. We'll see if he can make it on. But in Philadelphia, the 76ers, as I mentioned, hired Doc Rivers, a really good coach. What do you think of that hire, real quick, Jack? What's your opinion?
Rivers, I got to tell you, Doc Rivers strikes me as a very nice human being. Very nice human being. And obviously, he's a good coach. I mean, he won a championship as coach of the Celtics. He disappointed with the Clippers. Let's not get around it. I mean, Clippers were given a heck of a chance to win the NBA title this year. Yours truly picked them to win the title. And it's easy to say, well, it was an unusual season and so on. And that's why, the Clippers didn't. But no, I don't want to hear that, because you keep your team together. They underachieved. The past Clippers teams they had with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. They underachieved under Doc Rivers, those teams as well. And Doc Rivers, now the talk is, he badly wants Joel Embiid to stay, because Joel Embiid is eyeing and, going elsewhere.
Right.
And he wants to coach him and so on. But what a new coach is supposed to say? I don't want him here and so on. And the Sixers wanted Doc Rivers badly. The moment he became available, they jumped on it. They didn't want him to interview with anyone else and so on. And is he an improvement over Brett Brown? Yeah. He's got, and is he going to have to respect the players? Of course. I mean, he's that type of coach that commands respect, and he gets it. But does it translate into the Sixers improving? Can Embiid and Simmons play really that well together? Can the other pieces, can he move the right way? And, when you have Howie Leonard and Paul George and you don't get it done, okay? Yeah. And especially having a 3-1 lead, against Denver in that series, and that series gets away. It's just, I don't know. But with that said, it's a good hire by the Sixers, because when you look what's out there, who else you could hire, they obviously had to make a coaching change. The time was ripe after, eight years of the guy they had before it. And the Sixers, it'll give the Sixers kind of it puts them basically in a position of contending for the number one seed in the East, because the Celtics have been a big disappointment since they pulled that Kyrie Irving deal. And the Kyrie obviously isn't with them anymore. But when they made that deal, the Celtics were supposed to take the next step.
Yeah.
And they never did, and they got all these draft choices in the trade, with the Nets. It just hasn't worked out. And the Celtics, if anyone, I think, is taking a step back. And people are complaining about Brad Stevens now.
Well, I think it's a good hire too, Jack. I don't know. I think it's definitely an improvement. The 76ers seem to have the horses. They just for some reason the team can't put it together all at once. They've had trouble with that for the last couple of years. The Celtics, again, you're right. So I don't even know who's the clear choice next year coming out of there. I mean, Miami played, I think, way above. Of course, they had a couple injuries too to their big center and stuff like that. And they had a good season. I think Miami needs a couple more pieces to really compete at the championship level. And I think the 76ers do need somebody to unify that team. They got the talent, Jack. They do have the talent, as do the Celtics. But I think the 76ers might even have maybe a little bit more playmakers. I shouldn't even say that. I think they're about equal, but they definitely need a coach.
I think, Matt, what we have to do is I'm the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
Because despite the Bucks wanting the Greek freak Giannis to stay, okay, chances are Giannis is going elsewhere. And wherever he goes, that's going to significantly change the balance of, the East and the NBA landscape, unless, of course, he goes to the Knicks. And I'm not joking around. He might find that appealing, go to a team, get him started, so on, big market, New York, the Knicks, storied franchise. But if Giannis should go to, let's say, the Miami Heat, they're far and away the best team in the East.
Right.
If he should go to the Boston Celtics, all of a sudden the landscape changes. They're the best team in the East as well. So where he goes to, wow, that's really going to change the landscape significantly, unless he goes to one of the weaker teams, as I said, like the Knicks. Imagine he goes to the Nets.
Yeah.
But we got to talk about the Nets another time, because I'm not, even though I think they're serious contenders to go to the NBA Finals next year, I see that as a 2-year situation with Kyrie Irving's personality, but that's a talk maybe for another time.
I agree with that, Jack. So what we're going to do, we're going to take I call it a 7th inning stretch, a commercial break for about 3.5 minutes. So on the other side, hopefully we have Joe Santo from the Philadelphia's Voice, who will talk to us a little bit about the Eagles and perhaps even on the 76ers. So let's go ahead and get that in. If you guys need to, to do whatever.
3 minutes. I'm going to do a little shadow boxing on the side.
You're gonna do. That's pretty good, Jack. So we'll have a little 7th inning stretch here, and we'll be back on the other side of the schedule.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay,
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Yes, sir. There you go. Get out a little seventh inning stretch in there for everybody. So, Jack, due up next is hopefully Joe Santo when we get him on there. I'm going to set him up a little bit before we start. And this is he said that he's an award-winning writer from Philly's Voice. He wrote a I wouldn't say a scorching article, but a derogatory article on Andrew Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz. Yeah,
Scorching is a good word. I wouldn't say derogatory, even though Wentz didn't come off looking good.
Yeah, back in February, Wentz had that back injury. He was due up on that big contract, and why he kind of raised the question of why that Foles played better than Wentz, or the Eagles played better under Foles. He had a lot of sources that were saying that Wentz was more about himself than the team, and the sources were from within the organization and the players, that Wentz was a little selfish. He acted like he won 10 Super Bowls instead of actually and he didn't even was the quarterback for one, and that maybe Wentz was favoring Hurts over some other wide receivers, throwing him the ball more than them checking down to him when maybe that he could have thrown to other people. He even got in what they were saying that he was bullying the offensive coach there a little bit too. So if Joe does come back in, we'll talk to him a little bit more about the blowback he received from not only the Eagles, but from fans and people in Philadelphia. So hopefully he joins us. Go right ahead, Jack.
I remember Joe, who's a good friend, as well. He told me before the article came out that it was going to come out and it was going to have impact him tremendously. He was concerned how it might impact him, because the blowback was really going to be hard. Obviously, Joe, as a good reporter, didn't tell me his sources, and I wouldn't ask who his sources were. But when the article came out, obviously there were a lot of denials within by certain people in the Eagle organization, because Carson Wentz is their golden boy. You couldn't say anything bad about him. At that time, he was supposed to be the face of the franchise and so on. And it was a tough time that Joe was going through. He had to face a lot of threats, so on. The Eagles revoked his credentials, basically. And Joe could answer these questions how he responded better than I could, but it reflected very poorly on the Philadelphia Eagle organization. And it was something, in fact, that Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman talked about on First Take, the situation with Joe and so on. Max did mention it several times, Joe's name, and Joe got a bit of a raw deal, and he got vindication later on, because Carson Wentz admitted, I could have been a better teammate. That was his vindication later on. So Joe was just reporting what he was told, within the Eagle locker room directly by players and others and so on about Carson Wentz's attitude. And Carson Wentz himself would later confirm it, that he could have done a better job in his relationships, with his teammates.
Yeah, I mean, any investigative reporting, especially when you're, I wouldn't say attacking, but you're bringing up certain things about a very popular player. And as you said, this was supposed to be, the golden boy. And Carson Wentz does have talent to be a first-string quarterback. He's made some unbelievable throws, as I've seen him and watched him during certain games. But a lot of us, me included, Jack, in that, I didn't realize how it was going there, and in the Eagles locker room, and in the and how the team felt, or some people felt within the organization. As he pointed out last time he was on, he had some a lot of sources that were telling this, and he was basically just reporting on what they were telling him. And he did get a lot of blowback from it. But anytime you do a piece, as being a former writer, the promoter or that team, or that promotion team, I should say, they don't want you to talk bad about their fighter. They don't want you talking bad about their, about their quarterback. They don't want you talking. Yeah. So, you're going to get blowback, as I imagine you have, Jack.
I've done investigative pieces. It's never pleasant. You want to know why? Because you have to be critical of people. Even if you're not personally being critical, you're quoting other people either telling you things on or off the record that are negative about someone else. Okay?
Right.
And there have been a lot of times I've just laid out and quoted what other people have told me. And it's never a pleasant thing. And quite honestly, those aren't stories writers necessarily enjoy writing, but it's their job, to cover things and so on. And, and you do take a certain amount of blowback, and it's to be expected. And, it goes with the territory.
Jack, what was your biggest article that you wrote?
Well, I got several. To start pinpointing individual ones, I'm not even going to so much, go there with that, because once I'm done with the story, it's done with and so on. Time passes by, unless it becomes a national thing, like this Carson Wentz, thing, because that really went national, because you're talking about a franchise player here.
Yeah.
You're not talking about smaller time athletes who someone isn't as familiar with. And it could be as minor thing like why a boxer left his trainer, or why after someone has trained the boxer for a lot of years, they're offered really a much lower percentage. Now the trainer, will come to me and tell me things about the manager, this and that. And, and a lot of times it's done out of hurt. You have to know what's valid, what's not. You know, I've been told so many things that I haven't written about that could be damaging to someone else and so on. But that kind of takes away from the content, you know, of the article. So, yeah.
Well, Jack. Well, now this piques my interest right now. Since Joe ain't on right now, you being a writer and you get some stories or some things thrown your way. What goes into making your decision? I mean, I would imagine there's some things that might have been true that you were fed that you might not have written about, or some things that might be true that you might not write about, or you did.
I did an article, okay, a lot of years ago. I'll go back a while ago with Joey Gamache. He got knocked out by Arturo Gatti in a couple of brutal rounds. In the lead up to that fight, I'd spent a lot of time with Joey Gamache and had arranged to be in his dressing room at Madison Square Garden the night of the fight. And I followed the whole Gamache thing from beginning to end. And when Arturo Gatti got on the scales, there was talk that he wasn't weighed the proper way at all, that the weights were just red, they weren't actually taken. And when Gamache got in the ring with Gatti, he looked so small compared to Arturo Gatti, which led to a belief that Gatti legitimately didn't make the weight, because Gatti was close to 20 pounds. He weighed close to 20 pounds more the next day after weighing in. And
Right.
As soon as Gatti got off the scales, he took a gulp of water so you couldn't weigh him again. And it was talking to all the people behind the scenes, certain people on the commission and on the inside in the fighters' camp. And you do an investigative piece to get it together, like certain improprieties, like double standards, where certain fighters are going to be favored more than someone else, and you're bringing out the evidence. You know, and I did that, and at the time, it was a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling because that was before the internet hit its stride. And I used to go to all the club shows in the New York State Athletic Commission. I was extremely friendly with them because some of these club shows, I was the only reporter there. So I was kind of treated like a celebrity. And now after the story comes out, they're kind of looking at me a little like kind of leery, like, you know, like to be careful around me because I could be the enemy, so on. But that attitude changed. Thankfully, it didn't last for long. And they realized I was just doing my job and so on. And everything wound up being good. Actually, the one with the thin skin, after being a little suspicious, was a gentleman who was the commissioner named Mel Southard. Mel Southard, the reason he was able to shake it off so easy and then be on really good terms with me again is because he worked for George Steinbrenner with the Yankees. Okay,
Right.
so I guess if you work for George Steinbrenner, didn't get much, you know.
Yeah,
than that. So we got along real. He respected at least what I was doing, not that he necessarily agreed. And it wound up being a court case where I wound up getting subpoenaed and so on to explain the situation. And you know, and that was because Joey Gamache was suing the New York State Athletic Commission. So I was subpoenaed to testify on Joey Gamache's behalf because I was in his dressing room and everything, and I was indirectly associated, you know, with him through writing the story. So as a reporter, normally, you know, I wasn't taking any sides. I was just reporting on the news.
Right. But I mean, like I said, I would imagine that whoever you're doing this piece on that is not reflecting too great on, I imagine they do take that personally. And as you said, you know, it becomes, and it got to make you uncomfortable. I mean, I've never been a reporter, so I don't know, but I would imagine you put something like that in print, that it's a personal thing to him when it really shouldn't be, but how can it not be? You know, I mean, it's got to be really tough.
And I'm going to tell you a little secret. Even with the Wentz thing that went national, the best way to deal with something you don't like it is ignore it.
Yeah.
Because all these stories, if you keep them alive, they're going to get bigger and bigger.
Sure.
And I kind of laughed to myself thinking, if you just take the original criticism and let it go, it's forgotten about.
Sure.
Because we have new news all the time. When I say forgotten about, I don't mean completely. Someone could refer to it later on briefly, but you keep something going by complaining about it. You're going to make it bigger. Like if a reporter, a beat writer, writes something negative about a player,
Right.
and the player keeps complaining back every time he sees the reporter, you're keeping this going. If you just basically ignore the remark, or you could tell him you don't like it, and that's the end of it,
Sure.
the thing dies down. And that's, basically the attitude I've taken all along on it, and it's sometimes things are made out bigger than they should be. You had a case, for example, when Bobby Bonilla played for the Mets. One
Right.
of the reporters wrote something he didn't like, and Bonilla's then challenging him to a fight. Of
Yeah.
course, that's additional news, and challenging to a fight made the news bigger than the original news.
Sure.
The new news is bigger than the original news.
Sure.
And
Sure.
you magnify things, and and they don't understand that a lot of
Yeah.
times.
I mean,
You just leave it alone. Someone's doing their job, they're reporting on it, and at the end of the day, best thing is to move on. But some people have a hard time. Certain reporters in the past, like Dick Young, okay, in his heyday with the Daily News and so on, for whatever reason, he didn't like Tom Seaver. Supposedly, according to Tom Seaver, Young had differences with Dave Kingman. And
Right.
when Dave Kingman was with the Mets, and Kingman was Seaver's friend, so Dick Young went over to talk to Tom Seaver, and Tom Seaver told Dick Young to get away from him.
Right.
From that point on, Dick Young had it in for Tom Seaver. So you keep giving Tom Seaver little digs. That was a case of Tom Seaver keeping it going. And when he wrote down that some of the wives, Nancy Seaver he wrote something about Tom Seaver's wife, Nancy Seaver. And at that point, Tom Seaver wanted out. He said, an attack on my family is something I can't take.
Right. Right.
But you kind of wonder in a situation like that, why didn't the team come to their star player's defense?
Right. Right.
Because, situations change.
Well, Jack, with the Eagles this year, they're really struggling. Carson Wentz is struggling. The defense is a surprising thing to me. I mean, normally the Eagles defense is a very solid defense. Pittsburgh kind of picked them apart, and that one rookie receiver, can't think of his name off the top of my head, had like 4 touchdowns. And it just seems right now in the NFC East is terrible right now to begin with. But the Eagles, a lot of people picked them to win the division as they did the Cowboys. It was like half and half. And right now the Eagles are playing awful, and they played a little bit better against Pittsburgh, but they're still, we talk about wins and losses, and, we as fans, we get encouraged when the game is close or competitive. But at the end of the day, whether you lose by 40, you lose by 1, you still lost. And that's what it ends. That's what counts at the end of the year. It doesn't matter how much you lost by or how much you won by. It matters. You have to have the record to get in. And right now, the Eagles are looking pretty bad compared to last year in the year.
I don't know whether you have to have the record to get in the NFC East. The Cowboys in first place at 2-3, and the Eagles are 1-3-1, only a half game behind. Last year, the Cowboys, if you recall, had the division locked up.
True.
They had it locked up. We were just waiting for them to kind of win a game at the end of the year, and they just couldn't win. And the Eagles caught them at the wire. And It's funny, leading up to that, we'd see percent probability of Cowboys winning the division. It was gone from 92% to 75% to 70%, sinking each week.
Right.
And the Eagles somehow stole the division. And, you could get a scenario like that this year where it's crazy, but if the Eagles go 7-8-1, hypothetically, that might be able to win the division. Who knows? I shouldn't even put a number on it. And if you're getting better as the year goes along and enter the playoffs on an upswing, your record becomes somewhat irrelevant. And especially in this age, not that home field is a major advantage in the playoffs. It could be depending on the location.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be big crowds there for the playoffs and
No.
wherever it's going to be. So any home field advantage a team's going to get is going to be minimized. Take a place like New Orleans where it's so loud, where the opposition quarterback has a hard time calling out the signals, and his guys have a hard time hearing what he's saying. This year, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the playoffs, there's always two different trains of thought in any sport. And it's funny to me because, everybody's fighting for that bye in the playoffs. So they have that extra week off and they get a better matchup. But a lot of times a wild card team comes up there and wins it all. Not all the time, but sometimes they do. So I don't know about home field advantage versus playing on the road. We know Seattle has a big advantage. New Orleans has a big advantage, supposedly. Kansas City is one of the loudest crowds in the NFL. And it does help those teams out when they play at home. But I've seen a lot of them blow it there, too, on home field in the playoffs. I don't know if it's overrated or not, Jack. But, hey, listen, it's all part of the game. As you said, the fans not being there in most stadiums. I guess they're still allowed in some of the stadiums. It's going to play a part. We'll see what happens by the end of the year. Hopefully, we have some kind of serum or something where we can go and take a shot, and by the end of the year, where everybody can get there. But I do think it's funny how teams end up losing their edge or gaining edge or are underrated. These are all interesting things to me. We're looking at the 49ers right now. I know they have a lot of injuries, but Garoppolo gets pulled out of the game. He throws 3 interceptions. And, there's some big upsets happen this weekend. And we consider them big because this is based off last year. This is a new year. The Raiders won. Miami's getting better. The Raiders look like a decent, solid team this year. And we shouldn't take any team for granted or think any team's bad. It's so early in the season, and last year is last year, Jack.
Well, let's read between the lines. Garoppolo getting pulled out of the game. Kyle Shanahan, his coach, said, well, it's Garoppolo's ankle was bothering him a lot. That's why he threw interceptions. He wasn't healthy. You wonder whether that's accurate or not. Well, first off, Miami had a significant lead over the 49ers. So,
yeah,
I had no problem him pulling Garoppolo out, but you kind of wonder whether there's anything underlying, whether there's a little bit of discontent with the coaching staff over the job Garoppolo's doing. I don't know, okay? Maybe they're set, well, he's our franchise quarterback. We're sticking with him no matter what, and so on. But maybe it was an excuse partly for them to sit him down. Sometimes you look for reasons to sit someone down because it's hard to do it just straight out, because then you really have to explain yourself. Then you have to say, Kyle Shanahan would have to then say, well, Garoppolo hasn't been playing well. We want to give someone else a look. That's heavy-duty stuff. You say that, you're undermining your number one guy, your so-called number one starter, your so-called franchise quarterback. But if you talk about the ankle, you're nearly relieved he has a little bit of an ankle issue, so you could look at someone else and say, oh, no, he's our guy, but we're looking out for him. Garoppolo supposedly was furious, okay? Because he says, I'm the quarterback of this team. I want to be in there and play. It reminds me of another San Francisco 49er quarterback, Hall of Famer Steve Young. Steve Young was taken out by his coach, George Seifert, in a game in which the Niners were getting blown out. They were a few touchdowns more. Young had an absolute fit on the sideline.
Right.
Okay? And, I don't care how good the quarterback is. This is where the coach has to assert himself and just tell the quarterback basically to shut up and go to the side. And I'm not taking anything from you. And then if the quarterback gives him a hard time, Let him know you're not starting next week either, you know? Bill
Right.
Parcells did that with Phil Simms. Remember Simms went to the sideline to complain to Parcells, and Phil Simms was a Giant franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Simms pointed out to Simms, and Simms kind of backed off. He kind of knew his place. You can only push a coach so far during a game because Mac, as a coach, you got to be so focused on the game. If one of these players has a hissy fit, it could affect the coach's concentration in the rest of the game. It kind of lingers on.
Yeah.
It could really linger on.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to game time, you want to give the team the best shot of winning, and even if you're losing, you still are thinking about coming back and winning the game. You never, unless there's a minute left and you're down 3 touchdowns, then you might start thinking about that. So we got a new little segment we're going to do, Jack. It's called the trivia question, and it'll be interesting to see how smart people are. So let's go ahead and play a little theme music for that.
I'm not good at Jeopardy. Real Jeopardy. My wife is, she's not bad at that.
I hear you,
Shows me
Jack.
how uneducated I am. I have 2 masters degrees.
Well, I think you're
educated in the ways of life.
You know a lot about history of sports, Jack. So you should get this. You can play along. The people that are watching can also play along. So, Jack, who was the first NFL player in the history of football to spike the football?
Now, I'm going to take a chance on this. Oh, I know this. Homer Jones.
Yes, sir. Yes, it was, Jack.
Yeah. I nearly muffed that. You know who I was going to say? Otis Taylor.
Right?
I rememmed Homer Jones. Yeah. Homer
Yes,
Jones.
yes. At the time,
giant receiver.
Oh, my God.
Great name out of the past.
Oh my God, he was at the time. The players were throwing footballs into the stadium, and the commissioner, I think I'm almost positive, I'm 100% sure it was Pete Rozelle, came out, and he started fining the players for throwing the football. So Homer Jones catches the football from Fran Tarkin, and they were quite a duo the 4 years that they were there. And he went to throw the ball out of the stadium. He said he remembered at the last second about that fine he was going to get, and he ended up throwing the ball into the ground, so he didn't get fined for throwing the football in the stadium, and Homer Jones continued to do that for the rest of the year. So the celebration, or the spiking of the football that led to other celebrations in the end zone, was all started by Homer Jones. A receiver that didn't get hurt would have went on to have an unbelievable career. He still holds a lot of Giants records as their receiver back from the 60s. So if he didn't get hurt, he was one of the first big, fast receivers in the league. And so that's who was the first player to spike the NFL football in the end zone, was Homer Jones, Jack.
Homer Jones, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Those end zone celebrations, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they started in the early 80s when the Redskins had the Hogs. John Madden would call it like the fun pack after the Redskins had scored a touchdown. But I remember Super Bowl IV, Otis Taylor, the great wide receiver, the Chiefs, makes a phenomenal play. He catches a pass thrown to the sideline from Len Dawson. He breaks a tackle, runs downfield, breaks another tackle, scores a touchdown, spikes the ball. But none of the players run to the end zone to greet him. He has to come back to the sideline where they mop him. In this day and age, the whole team would be on the sideline.
Right.
Roger Maris hit his 61st homer. He had to be pushed out to take a bow. This day and age, the score, they get a 5-2 lead in the 4th inning, the guy might take out and take.
Celebrations they've really changed over the years.
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah.
So, Jack, it looks like that Joe Santo ain't going to join us today for some reason.
Joe Santo's probably sleeping late.
He probably is.
Call him up now.
So anyway,
you want me to call him and have?
Well, talk about live radio, right? But I did message him a couple times, so maybe he is sleeping. Maybe you're right. But Jack, I know you have
Santo, I'll tell you.
I know you have a.
Joe Santos
Oh yeah,
story.
yeah. We'll get
He's
it. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Wait,
No,
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to give
Go ahead. You
Joe
no finish
Santos
up.
succeeded me as president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. I served 6 years as president and then voluntarily stepped down. So we're having a meeting, at the Barclays Center, one of our yearly meetings. And Joe Santos, coming from Philadelphia to Brooklyn, but he's caught in bad traffic. He calls me up and he asks me to run the meeting, which I was highly honored considering he has vice presidents and he wants me to run it. Because I guess like a quarterback that knows the system, I knew
Sure.
the system. I'm running the meeting. Meeting's done. I see Joe when the meeting's over and all the other writers are leaving to go to ringside for the fights. Joe's coming quickly towards me, and I figure, let me give him all the stuff that went on in the meeting because I'm trying to run his agenda because I knew what he wanted. I say, Joe, about the meeting, and he says, Jack, is there any food left? And I go, yeah. And he just runs by me. That's all. And we didn't talk the rest of the night what went on at the meeting. Joe became a legend to me that night after that.
That's great. That's great. Like that's it. Hey, listen. First things first, Jack. So I understand you have a thought for the day.
Of the day, yeah.
Go right ahead.
We let this go, and we didn't really mention it. New York's been blessed to have a lot of great athletes, to spend a lot of great years here. Some got the glory of the championships, some didn't. And one of the least appreciated athletes, I think the way things are going to turn out historically, is a man who spent 15 years here, Hendrik Lundqvist, as goalie of the New York Rangers. He was successful. They went to the playoffs 10 of the 15 years. They went to the finals one year where they lost to the LA Kings. But he was a rock and goal. I mean, arguably, one of the great Rangers of all time. Now, he parted ways with the Rangers, and the Washington Capitals, the Rangers' rival, picked him up. And this happens in sports so much. I mean, you play a certain amount of years for your career, and there's just not a spot for you. The team kind of wants to move on sooner or later. And 15 years he was here. And he was the one constant for the New York Rangers. And he was the one player who always gave the New York Rangers hope. Because I don't have to tell you, the goalie, he has the most important position in sports. I mean, a quarterback could always hand the ball off, and if the offensive line is blocking and the runners are doing their job, you could sometimes win with a running game and the minimum of passing. But if the goalie's off that day, the team's going to be off. If the team is playing awful, but the goalie has a hot hand, he's going to keep his team in the game and give them a chance to win. And we've seen that happen a lot. And Hendrik Lundqvist, great Ranger, 15 years here. And he's one of these athletes when he comes back to the team. First game back, he's going to get a rousing ovation, not only for that game, but every game thereafter. And it's in his career so much mirrored Patrick Ewing's. I mean, he was as good for the Rangers as Patrick Ewing was for the Knicks. Neither guy got that elusive championship for whatever reason. And who knows how they would have been perceived had they. But regardless, Hendrik Lundqvist, one of perhaps the most underappreciated, athletes in New York sports history.
Oh, very well said, Jack. I like to give a little quick thought for the day since we got a little extra time on the show today, and it's about the NBA and the lowest ratings in history for a championship series. In fact, the NBA ratings were down all year, and there's a lot of reasons for that, Jack. I mean, it's a crazy season. It got stopped. It got restarted. They went through the bubble. They changed their format. But I was reading some articles out there, and they said it had nothing to do with the social justice message. Some of these articles were saying, which, if you look on Facebook and you looked at a lot of different groups, it had a lot to do with that. I believe that the NBA, and a lot of people don't realize this, Jack, but back in the 70s, before the Bird Magic happened, the rivalry happened, a little bit before that, basketball was tape delayed and the finals were actually showed late at night after the nightly news. And I can remember staying up to watch. I'm not sure who was in the championship that year, but I remember being up late at night as a kid and sitting up, and all of a sudden after the news, the NBA finals came on tape delay. That's how bad it was for the NBA at one time.
Mac,
Yes.
let me cut in. Magic Johnson on the Lakers against Dr. J on the Sixers. What a marquee matchup. Even
Right.
Magic Johnson was a rookie. That game 6, the historic game where the Magic was phenomenal. He played center for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was injured.
Remember, yeah.
That game 6 where they won the championship, that was on tape delay.
Yeah.
Tape
And
delay, isn't that crazy?
and people today, Jack, don't realize how bad it was at one time for one of the, the top 3 sports in the country right now. I believe that, everybody should have a right to speak and say anything that they want on any cause that they believe in. I'm 100% for all that. I believe that everybody that it happened in the past, Jack, where Bill Russell and some other players did some things to represent their cause. But I think what happens when the organization, or I should say the association, gets involved or maybe over-involved in a cause besides behind the scenes, and they start pushing things on television and on different medias that have not a lot to do with the game and more with the cause, it ends up not becoming sports anymore. It ends up becoming political. And once you start mixing policy and political statements, and especially I don't want to say oversaturation, but when this becomes the top story, you're going to turn a lot of people off. I saw it in Facebook. I saw it in social media where people were not just watching it just because of this. And for somebody to come out and for these people to come out and write articles saying that's not the reason is not only they know it's wrong, but it's kind of blind. I think there's a place and purpose for everything, Jack. I don't believe that sports during the game or at the most influential time of the games should be promoting anything but that sport. And once you start doing something else, you're going to turn a lot of people off. And I really believe that affected the ratings a lot this year, Jack.
Well, it's constant. That's the thing that wears on people. And whether we believe in the protests or not, that's not the issue. If it's a sporting event, I don't want to see it over and over. For example, I believe in education reform.
Right.
But I don't want to see it on the back of a player's jersey the way I did. I'm looking to see which player it is. A guy off the bench. Education reform.
Right.
Who is he? I don't want to see that. What bothers me the most is we can't have even a discussion on things. If someone makes a wrong remark, a remark someone doesn't like, they're going to get fired immediately.
Right.
Fired.
Right.
You take, and I'm not going to get deep into this because it's the type of thing, you say the wrong thing, it gets you in trouble. The Sacramento Kings had an announcer who worked for them for over 30 years. I think his name is George Napier, if I'm not mistaken. And he tweeted with Marcus Cousins, and it could be, and Marcus Cousins didn't like him, and Marcus Cousins was trying to trap him into maybe saying the wrong thing. That was the speculation. So he and the tweet that the announcer sent back was deemed as inappropriate. Okay.
Right.
I mean, I didn't think it was outrageous. I didn't say what it was, but some people might get a little offended by it. Okay. But the point is, he was let go after 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, after 30 years, and sometimes people do make mistakes. There's no such thing as an apology or whatever. And it explodes. It gets out of hand. And I don't want to hear about it on Sports Report. Jalen Rose, who I like a lot, listening to, well-spoken, He's on ESPN one time. He's talking basketball. In the middle of that, he makes a social statement that has nothing to do with it. And I go, what?
Yeah.
You know, that totally inappropriate. And
Yeah.
you're hearing that all the time on the shows. Now, I understand when it's news that day.
Right.
Something happens, you cover it. John Carlos and Tommy Smith at the Olympics giving the salute, Black Power salute. That's big news. Talk about that, debate that. That happened in the sports arena.
Right.
There's what I saw, what I didn't like. That's was worth talking about it. At a Kansas City Chief game, the players were locking arms in solidarity and got booed. I didn't like that. I thought
Me either.
that was kind of the fans disgusting, you know, so on. Yeah, I can understand some people objecting to players taking a knee and so on, and they're having a viewpoint of objecting to that and booing that. Not that I condone that at all, but I can understand that. But you just lock arms in solidarity and get booed. And I don't think they were getting booed for that one particular action. I think it was the fans' way of saying, we're tired of any type of protest during the game, play the game, so on.
You know, there's two things on that, Jack, and I want to speak. And like I said, I don't even like talking about this on air, honestly. But there is a direct cause and an answer to a lot of things, and to deny it to me is crazy. The two biggest things I want to bring up out of that, and then we'll push on, is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a very civil activist person, but you never saw him in the ring before the fight or during the fight or anything like that, having anything on his trunks or anything or speaking. That he did the interviews with other people. He did bring up the plight that he felt that black people were going through, and how how unfair it was. Great spokesman, but when it came to the fight, it was the fight. And the second thing I want to talk about real quick, Jack, is when a soccer player gets let go from a team, a Major League Soccer player. I'm not going to bring up the team or the name, but because his wife liked a post on Facebook, we've gone way too far. And we've gone from one extreme to the other. There's no halfway, and it's kind of depressing to me. So that's all I really got to say on it. I just wanted to bring up that the hypocrisy with somebody writing that the social justice message has nothing to do with the ratings going down. We all know it does. It's at least partly responsible, amongst other things, and you're just turning people off.
It just kind of weird at people, but partly with the NBA too. It's a little too soon to judge. Things were a little out of whack.
I agree with that too.
But I think the NBA, Adam Silver said they're not going to have the social justice messages going forward.
Yeah.
I think the NBA players have to realize everyone is in it together. And, you know, if the product is going to suffer greatly, you know, everybody loses in a certain sense.
Sure.
But listen, I give the players a lot of credit that make a lot of money, who could and they get involved. They could keep their mouth shut and just collect their money. I give them a ton of credit, but there's kind of got to be a balance. They have to understand that you can't antagonize your customers either. You've got to have a right balance. Okay?
Right. I agree with that 100%, Jack. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get into a little bit of the birthdays in this day in history, in sports history, Jack. So, and in 1908, this should interest you. Upset over the seating arrangements at the Baseball World Series, sports reporters form a professional group that will become the Baseball's Writers Association.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that crazy?
Cool. And the idea of these organizations are to improve seating, and it's a sore point with me. We had the Boxing Writers Association of America's dinner on Las Vegas in 2014 when I was president, and I presented to Floyd Mayweather Jr. the Fight of the Year award, and I was responsible for the dinner being in Vegas. I drove a very hard bargain with the Showtime Network, the MGM granted Las Vegas, Mayweather Promotions, and Golden Boy Promotions are promoting the event. That was my finest hour. Financially, I put together a great deal for the Boxing Writers Association, but I had to do it through negotiating in a way, like kind of bluffing, saying, well, if they don't meet our terms, we're then going to have to dinner in New York before an HBO event. They were the enemy kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it was a game of chicken. Finally, they gave in. Heck, I even had the head of the MGM calling me up. They gave in. We had a star-studded affair. Listen to this. On a Thursday night, I present the Mayweather the Fight of the Year award. You could go to YouTube and find that, you know.
Right.
Link my
Right.
name with his BWA Fight of the Year. 2 nights later, he's fighting at the MGM Grand against Marcus Madonna. Big fight. I got to pick up my press credentials. I go to ringside. They say it's not here. I go, what? I'm always at ringside. So I figure maybe I'm up by those luxury boxes. You know, not
Right.
bad. They gave me a seat in the next to last row with an obstructed view. And I'm trying to get it sorted out with the people who days earlier would be on their hands and knees doing anything for me, and all of a sudden I didn't exist to them. I was like an old star player who couldn't get a ticket to see my old team play.
That's funny.
And I'm in the press room. I still had some contacts, but unfortunately, I was so behind the technology. I had one of those flip phones, not with contacts in. I got an iPhone right after with all the contacts, and I got up to date.
Sure.
But the seating, that was one of the things I had to deal with all the time as BWAA president. And fortunately, with most of the groups, you know, I was friendly. We had to sort things out. And there've got to be protections for media writers, like, because if a team doesn't like you, that's how you get back at a writer for negative so-and-so. You know?
Sure. So, Jack, let's move on to 1949. This is up your alley. Ezra Charles knocks out Pat Valentino for the heavyweight boxing title. Yes, the heavyweight boxing. And, you know, a lot of people, my dad talked about Ezra Charles, but a lot of people don't talk about Ezra Charles. How good a champion was he, Jack?
Ezra Charles, pound for pound, some people, you know, they rate him as one of the best ever. He was really at his best when he was a light heavyweight, even though he never won the light heavyweight title, never fought. Look, he beat Archie Moore a few times. Right. Ezra Charles, what affected him greatly, he knocked out a fighter named Sam Barodi, and Barodi then died right after that. And Ezra Charles lost a little something after that, but he still won the World Heavyweight Championship. He made something like 8 title defenses. He beat Jersey Joe Walcott in his first 2 fights. And then at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, Walcott hit him with a left hook in the 7th round, one of the dramatic one-punch knockouts. In the rematch of Walcott, in which Charles tried to become the first man to regain the title, most people thought he won the fight at the end of 15 rounds, but Walcott was given a decision. But then Charles passed his peak, had 2 more chances when he fought Rocky Marciano, and Marciano rallied in the late rounds of the first fight to win the decision, pull it out. And then in the second fight, he cut Rocky Marciano's nose so badly, okay, that had the fight lasted just a little longer, they probably would have pulled the Rock out. It was like do or die for the Rock. But Marciano managed to get Charles out at the end of the 8th round. Charles also, he defeated decisively a comebacking Joe Louis. Now, Charles won the vacant title after Louis vacated it. Louis was champion from 1937 to 1949, but he made a comeback in 1950 to fight Charles. And these comebacks usually don't work out. And Charles beat him pretty decisively. Great. One of the best ever pound for pound, Ezra Charles.
Excellent. In 1964, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris hit home runs on back-to-back pitches. First time that it was ever done. And we're not talking about, you know, sitting there. We're talking about he went up, Mantle hits the pitch, Maris gets up, he hits the first pitch, both home runs in 1964.
That was 64. Maris was never after his 1961 season, in which he had 61 homers. The next year he had 33 homers. Excellent year, but not, you can now compare to 61. It was a come down, but he was still a terrific play in 62. And the
Sure.
Yankees did win the World Series over the Giants that year. But 1964 was Mantle's last great year as we knew it. He played
Right.
4 more years, but from 1965 to 1968, he was on the way down. But in 1964, Mantle hit 35 home runs, hit 303, and knocked in 111 runs. Okay.
Right.
That was basically the Mix last hurrah. And he also, in the 64 World Series in Game 3 over Barney Schultz, he hit a walk-off homer to win that game. And in fact, Mantle said afterwards that's the only time in his career he ever said before he came to bat he was going to hit a homer. So when he saw Schultz warming up, he said he was going to hit a homer and he was going to end it right there.
Yeah.
And Mick called the shot. He just didn't point to the stands.
Well, I mean, one of the, we talk about Ruth and Garrick, and Mantle and Maris is not as, I don't think they were as great as Ruth and Garrick, but they sure were a heck of a pair on those 60s, those early 60s baseball teams, Jack. In 1965, Sandy Koufax pitches a shutout of the World Series, and this is his second shutout of a World Series, beating the Twins 2-0. So, of course, Sandy Koufax, one of the greatest pitchers during his time ever in history, Jack.
Well, Sandy Koufax lost Game 2 of the series. Okay, I think that's the year he had to miss Game 1 because of Yom Kippur. He took off. I believe that was the series. But in any event, he pitched Game 5. He beat the Twins to put the Dodgers up 3-2. And then he pitched Game 7 on 2 days rest. Two days rest. He pitched a complete Game 2 hit shutout.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about Sandy Koufax threw very hard. They didn't have the radar gun around then. He threw very hard, though. So when you think of players pitching them on 3 days rest, how hard it is, that they're not used to that. Some of them even have a hard time going on 4 days rest.
Right.
Sandy Koufax pitched one of the biggest a 7th game of a World Series on 2 days rest.
Yeah.
And pitched a 2-hit shutout.
Yeah.
Look how phenomenal that is.
That's incredible, especially compared to today's standards, Jack. That's for sure. In 1973, 42-year-old Willie Mays gets his last hit of his career as the Mets beat the A's 10-7 in the World Series Game 2.
I remember Mays looking into the dugout after that, because he showed them a flash of the old Willie Mays to see their reactions. So.
Yeah, I mean, and Jack, I never saw Willie Mays with the Giants. I did see him with the Mets, and of course he had a lot of struggles at the end of his career with the Mets, and kind of stopped playing because he wasn't having any fun anymore, and really was a chore for him. But what a great player the Say Hey Kid was, one of the greatest in history, and I wish I was around then to watch him with the Giants and the great ball player.
Well, a couple of anecdotes. People remember Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world to beat the Dodgers in the 1951 playoffs to send the Giants to the World Series. On deck was a rookie who was scared to death by his admission. That was Willie Mays. So it would have been interesting had he come up. Willie Mays also had another big at-bat that could have been pretty significant that's been lost in history. In the 1962 World Series, the Yankees were up 1-0 in the 7th game, and they had a runner. Ralph Terry was on the mound. There was a runner on first base and 2 outs, and Willie Mays was up, and he had a double. He didn't make the last out to end the series. So now there were runners on 2nd and 3rd because of Willie Mays' clutch hit. And then, of course, Willie McCovey, the next guy up, hits a line drive right at Bobby Richardson, and Yankees win the World Series.
Right. So I'm sorry about that. I got a phone call coming right now, and that's Don Majowski. I got to get back to him after the show. Yeah.
Don's timing isn't good. He comes late at night other times. I mean, timing is never good. Don probably thinks he's on the show coming on right now.
Well,
listen.
I'll definitely.
So much. If you think I know a lot about boxing, not compared to Don, who I'm very close with. Promoter Russell Peltz, the Philadelphia promoter who's in the Hall of Fame, said it best about Don Majewski. He knows what shaving cream John L. Sullivan used. Okay. I don't hear you, Matt.
I know. I just was talking to my assistant producer. Hopefully, we'll call Don back and let him know that I'll get back with
You
him.
can call him after the show.
Yeah, definitely. So we're back on the events that happened in this history. In 1978, Reggie Jackson causes a controversy, getting in the way of a ball being thrown to first base and deflecting it. And I remember that happening, Jack, back in that World Series. And if I remember correctly, they let him stay on base. Isn't that true?
How the umpire could let that go is beyond me. Reggie sticks his hip out. I mean, he stuck his hip out better than Elvis Presley ever did. Elvis was big with the hip. Reggie stuck it out. But
yes.
Listen, let's give Reggie credit. What a great play by him. Give him credit. I mean, talk about magnificent way to legally cheat.
Right.
Magnificent. And
definitely.
Wow. And how the umpires could let it go. I mean, the umpire there. You know what I think part of the problem is with umpires? And you could talk about football referees. They need help from their fellow officials. And it doesn't happen. Like you see in the NFL, a flag come in very late. It's as if the referee sees what he thinks might be a foul, but he's waiting for some help from the other fellow officials, and he doesn't get it. And then he hears the crowd booing loud, and then he decides to throw the flag.
Well, you know, the thing that bothers me about umpires as opposed to referees, Jack, is some of the umpires, they think the game is about them. They end up arguing with the managers when they shouldn't be arguing with the managers. There's a lot of that happened in the history of baseball where managers got thrown out and players got thrown out of games because the umpire was all about him and not the game. So.
Listen, that's bias, Mac. There is bias. The year Roberto Alomar spit in the umpire's face, I forgot the umpire's name. I'm having a brain cramp here. But regardless, Roberto Alomar and that umpire ironically became very close friends later, which is very heartwarming and a wonderful story. But the umpires were very mad at Roberto Alomar because he wasn't sufficiently disciplined for what he did. And they had a right to be mad. So some of their calls against Alomar wouldn't be right. A ball would be a little outside. They called it a strike. Now, Baltimore played Cleveland. I think that was 1997 in the playoff.
Right.
And the third called strike, on Alomar ended the game. And I'm watching it on TV. And the ball was clearly outside, yet the umpire goes, strike three, you're out. It was if you say, bleep you, Roberto. Alomar.
Right.
We're taking it in our own hands if you're not weren't disciplined.
And I see that a lot when there is some animus between the player and the umpire. You see that them close calls will go against the players sometimes.
Well, Greg Nettles, when he wrote a book after he retired from baseball, and Greg Nettles said when he came up with the Twins, there was a pitch that was called a strike that was clearly not a strike at all, and it was strike three. He just accepted it. He didn't complain. He walked to the dugout. And since after that, he had no problems with the umpire. It was as if he felt he was being tested.
Right.
The umpire because if the umpire likes a player, he might give him sometimes just tweak it slightly and give him just a little break that he might not otherwise have. But if the umpire doesn't like a player, he could, he kind of takes it into his own hands a little more. But in this day and age, with replays in the strike zones, I hope they don't take the strike zone away from an umpire, balls and strikes. It's
we'll
getting
see.
out of hand. And these replays, we got to debate another time.
Yeah.
Because I'm all for the replay within limits. Okay?
Yeah, but Jack,
have it within limits.
Well, Jack, the problem with something like that is if you do something and it works to a point, even if it slows something down it's going to go farther and farther. Once you open something up, once you open a can of anything up, it's hard to put it back in the can. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll definitely talk about that more. And birthdays, Jack. Born in 1910, John Wooden, college basketball coach of the UCLA Bruins, 10 national championships, considered probably by many the greatest college basketball coach of all
The
time.
Wizard of Westwood.
Yes, sir. Charlie Joyner, receiver of the San Diego Chargers, Cincinnati Houston. He was born in 1947. I remember watching him being thrown to by Dan Fouts way back when Dan Fouts and the San Diego Chargers. I think that was under Air Coryell, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Jack. Yeah.
A charismatic team.
Yes, they were. And born in 1967, Jack. We've brought him up on the show earlier. Stephen A. Smith, sports journalist and one of the hosts of First Take.
I like Stephen a lot. I don't know him personally.
Right.
I know Max Kellerman very well personally. I can call Max up if I need to speak to him and so on. I don't know Stephen A. Smith, but Stephen A. Smith kind of knows how to play to his base in a way. He's a fair man going both ways on the issues. For example, he criticized Colin Kaepernick when the NFL gave him a tryout, saying Colin Kaepernick's not interested in being a football player,
Right.
so on. But Stephen A. Smith knows he can only push the envelope so far one way, and then you got to push it back the other way. So he kind of knows how to tilt the scales. He's not a phony, don't get me wrong, not at all.
Yeah.
Okay, I think he's a very sincere individual. But you have to sometimes know how to play to a certain base in a way. And he kind of knows how to play to all the bases.
Both sides,
know,
definitely.
so-
I agree. He's very talented at and was one heck of a basketball reporter in his day.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, I enjoy listening to him debate things and so on. Yeah, he's a
So-
good man.
So, Jack, let's talk about tomorrow's show. Huge show tomorrow. We got a huge boxing show. We'll have started off. Iceman John Scully is doing at 7:30, and two of your friends that you know very well, and two probably legends in boxing as far as promoters and writers and historians are coming on. Tell the folks a little bit about the two experts we got coming in tomorrow, Jack.
Well, we have on Dennis Rappaport. Dennis Rappaport managed Jerry Cooney. He managed Howard Davis Jr. He managed Ronnie Harris, an Olympic, gold medalist who fought for a world title. He promoted as well. He promoted George Foreman when Foreman was on the comeback trail. He promoted Tim Witherspoon. He promoted Oleg Moskov, who he basically took from the scrap heap to winning a major version of the world heavyweight title. And he has great insights in the sport, loves the sport. He could talk about his experiences, what they had to go through behind the scenes for the Jerry Cooney, Larry Holmes fight in 1982. Then Don Majeski, he's been an international agent for 50 years. And he's put together some of the biggest fights for some of the biggest fighters like Lennox Lewis, Tommy Hearns, and so on. And on top of that, Don Majeski, wow, what a historian. I mean, I know a lot about boxing, but when I talk to Don, it's like I'm being in the classroom, in a certain sense, talking. Listen, it's a type of thing. If I went against Don, I could beat him once in a while, but I'm like a good tennis player playing Rafael Nadal.
Right.
Nadal once in a while, you could get him, which I've done in debates with Don. He still owes me a steak dinner for when I beat him on one thing,
And this.
But Don is in, wow, the knowledge that this guy gets. When I get my Hall of Fame ballot and I have to fill it out, and there's some names from the past I'm not overly familiar with, I talk to Don about them.
Right.
Yeah.
And find out. And this is all a preview of the big fight coming up October 17th, Jack. And
Vasily Lomachenko against Teofimo Lopez. That fight, the whole show is going to be on ESPN starting at 7:30.
Right.
And massive fight, Lopez and Lomachenko.
This
and
is a unification fight.
Forget unification, forget the titles. It's a terrific fight. Unification fights are nonsense. We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Well, I think in this case, Jack, it adds to it a little bit because I know it's going to be a great fight. You got two great fighters going at it. But I think with the unification adds just a little bit of spice to it. It may not make the fight, but it does add a little spice to it to have, the one champion unified. So I think it adds a little bit.
When you say it's for title, yeah.
Yes, definitely. So, Jack, that's it for our show today. Tomorrow, big show, guys. A boxing show from 8:30 almost all the way through.
We go on the air at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
We'll kill the clock for a half hour, Mac, from 8 to 8:30. We'll talk on
we have
8:30. Wow, 8:30 to 10. If you like
what a
boxing.
What a show. So I mean, three great experts, and I have a great expert as a co-host too. So I mean, I'm going to be the one sitting in the corner going, Joe Frazier. That'll be me.
You'll send the players in as offensive coordinator.
Definitely. I'll just let you guys.
I want Don and Dennis to hear their stories. You can hear me anytime.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, just to have that knowledge on one show is going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're out of here for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show. Tomorrow's going to be a great show, and we'll see you starting tomorrow. So.